Welcome to the 2021 Major Donor Symposium. In this breakout session entitled Essentials of a Successful Fundraising Program, two of our consultants, Ted Rodgers and Jay Barber, will guide you through a more strategic and relational approach to raising the funds that are critical to fulfilling your mission. As you listen to the content, feel free to engage with the question and answer feature where our team members will be standing by to address your questions. Questions and answers will be available during the session today and for about 15 minutes afterwards. For additional resources, including a copy of the slides from this presentation, please return to the breakout session event page after the session to download these resources. This breakout session and the others offered today will be available on demand beginning tomorrow. As we get started, let's kick off our time together by letting everyone know where you're joining from by typing that in the chat feature now. Have a great session.
Welcome to our breakout session for board members on insights into the elements of a successful fund development program. My name is Ted Rodgers, and I'm delighted to have you with us. Joining me is Dr. Jay Barber, President Emeritus of Warner Pacific University, a senior Murdock Fellow, and also one of our top senior consultants here at the Focus Group. We look forward to having you with us for the next few minutes while we share with you some of the insights that we've observed and learned over our years in development, and also look forward at some point possibly of engaging with you around any questions that you might have. So we're going to begin by Jay sharing with us the 6 principles of fundraising that we share routinely in our training and that we apply in all of our work. So Jay, would you walk us through those, please?
Well, thank you, Ted. I want to start by really thanking all of the board members who are setting aside time to go through the symposium today. Those of you that are here and those of you that are phoning in or logging in on Zoom, thank you so much for taking the time. So these principles of fundraising are tried and true principles that the focus group have been using for 30 years. We know that they work. So let me just kind of go over them with you first of all. The first one is that people give to people that they know and trust. You know that already, don't you? The other one is that people give because they're asked and shown how to give. Sometimes we think they'll just give because our mission is so persuasive. No, they give because they're asked and shown how to give. So that's an important principle. And then we also know that people give when they're involved and have a sense of ownership. Another very important principles. And then recognizing that giving really is a way of life. Generosity is really what this is all about. Giving is a way of life, and that is so important. And then something that I learned early in my career, because I had a lot of these, no, the answer no is never forever. There usually is some context, some reason for the no. And it is never forever. Many times it means going back to find out why the no. And then finally, proper planning maximizes results and minimizes costs. Ted?
Thanks, Jay. Next, we're going to just chat briefly with you about the importance of a case for support. I think it'd be hard to overstate the importance of a clear and compelling case for support. And we're going to share with you some key purposes behind the case statement. But let me tell you a story first. A few years ago, I was working with a ministry, and the president was out visiting with donors. And as we met together to debrief, we began to hear that the donors weren't responding well, and that they were giving and committing to gifts significant below even what they had committed to in our feasibility study interview process for their campaign. So after a few of these sessions, I decided let's talk about how you're using the case and what's your experience in presenting the case. Well, there was this pause, probably not as long as it seemed to me, but it was pretty long. And the president kind of lifted his head and said, I decided not to use the case. Well, that told the story, right? Because the donors weren't seeing the impact of their ministry. They weren't seeing, as Jay said in our 6 principles, they weren't being shown how to give and what the goals were of the campaign. So, Jay, walk us through what we've seen as some of the really important reasons why a case is important.
Well, thank you, Ted. The case is such an integral instrument in our whole idea and concept of fundraising. Sometimes we think of the case as a fundraising brochure that we send out to 10,000 of people on our donor list. No, the case is a presentation piece that we prepare expressly for our major donors to whom we're going to be talking about the capital campaign or the annual fund. So the elements of that case is that it provides a unity of vision and goals. It articulates that and makes it very clear. It provides missional outcomes. It tells amazing stories. This is what has happened in our mission. People's lives have been changed. It's altered the course of people's lives, and we want to tell that story. And you tell that in the case. And then it details what you're planning to do, the initiatives or the projects that are out there that you're planning to do. It also provides a timetable. When are we going to get this done? When will it happen, and when will it be completed? When you're sitting down with a donor, they're going to want to know. They're going to ask those questions. And then it illustrates gifts that are needed. What are the life changes that are going to happen if you give to this capital campaign? And then finally, it serves as an effective presentation tool. You can sit down with the donor, take them through, and often you know where the donor's passion is, and you're able to take them directly to that component of the case and say, here's what I know you're really interested in. Let me tell you about this. Let me tell you the stories. And then it actually has a plan that shows your budget and your gift plan on how you're planning to raise the total amount of the capital campaign or the annual fund.
Thanks, Jay. You know, one of the questions that we're frequently asked is, what's the difference between annual fund fundraising and campaign fundraising? And as frequently board members and others ask, how will our annual fund be impacted if we launch into this campaign? And we could give you lots of reasons to support our position that, in fact, the campaign environment actually draws your donors closer and increases their giving to your annual fund. But one of the important essential things that you need to understand as a board member is what's the difference between annual fund fundraising and campaign fundraising, because they're not the same. And so as you can see here, there are some important differences. One is that 60% of the money is going to come from about 40% of the donors, whereas in a campaign environment, it's going to be 90% plus of the money is going to come from 10% of the donors, and maybe fewer. And then the asking process is very different for both. There are group events in the annual fund setting, and you all have been to many different kinds of those. There are frequent mailings. There are even phone-a-thons and other strategies that people are employing to raise annual fund support. Whereas in the campaign environment, it's almost exclusively a series of one-on-one conversations with your lead donors. There's significant staff involvement in the annual fund and alumni programs at schools and colleges. And in the campaign environment, there's a significant dependency on volunteer leadership boards and major gift committees and groups like that. And then donors give differently in those two environments, and here's why. One is because in the annual fund environment, they know the gift is essentially perpetual. It's going to be something that the organization, the ministry, is going to come back to you each year and say, we need you to give that again. In fact, we need you to give more than you've given in the past. Whereas in the campaign environment, it's usually, as Jay said in his explanation of the gift plan, it's usually a defined time period for defined amounts. I like to say that when the donor looks at that and sees that it's a 3-year or so commitment, they see an off-ramp, they see an exit ramp, and they know they get a chance to recalibrate their giving when they get to that point. And then importantly, you need to know as a board member that annual fund fundraising is more expensive, and increasingly so. And so I would say 20% is probably the average, maybe creeping up towards 25 for a lot of organizations. Whereas in the campaign environment, because the gifts are larger, the number of donors are fewer, the costs are typically less, and usually often dramatically so, at least over the season of the campaign. So in a sense, you could say there are different kinds of giving. So I hope that's helpful to you. We want to go on now and talk to you about the different roles of the three key groups of players in your fundraising program, whether it's annual fund or campaign. If you look at this slide, you can see how the three play together to create a successful donor engagement program. In your mind, visualize those three circles pulling apart, creating silos. What happens? You don't have a successful major donor program or any kind of donor engagement program if the team isn't working together. So each one is an important partnership. Each one has their own role, and the effective program is a result of strong working together and keeping the roles clear. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about each of these groups and talk about the specific role that each one has. And Jay is going to begin by talking about the role of the president and the key position that he or she has in this process.
Okay, thank you, Ted. Talking about the role of the president or the CEO, I know we have both here, or we might have executive directors in the context of what we're doing here in our St. Augustine venture here. But I've been a president. I know something about this, and it's clearly important for the president to be in leadership in a campaign. So the president, first of all, is the vision caster. Where are we going? What is our plan? What is our vision for the future? Is the primary custodian and solicitor. And usually the president is responsible for really talking and developing relationships with the top 5, even 10. In some smaller organizations, that might even be a larger number, donors that you're going to sit down with and talk to them about your strategy and plan for a capital campaign. So that's the president's role. You know, every once in a while I run into a situation, I did that a few years ago now, we're sitting down with the president talking about a capital campaign, and the president said, you know, I'm really committed to this campaign. We need it desperately, but I just don't see I'm going to have much time to give to it. That immediately spelled doom for that campaign. The president must take leadership in the campaign. If they don't, if they're not able to make that kind of commitment, it's not likely that campaign is going to be successful. The president also holds the development team accountable. The development team has specific responsibilities in the plan, and the president will be sitting down with them on a regular basis to make sure they're held accountable to achieve each of those points during the campaign. The president is the external and internal leader of the campaign. You know, often the president or CEO or executive director really embodies what the organization or ministry is all about. And so the president is the external and internal leader, and leads also in the voicing of the campaign, articulates the vision, often is called upon to speak at a local church or for a service club or some group to say, this is what we're all about, and really is the person who's going to be talking about the campaign. And then finally, there's a development plan with every campaign, and the president has a key role in helping put that together, but approving that.
Thanks, Jay. We're going to take a minute now to talk about the important role of the Board Development Committee. Probably some of you attending this breakout serve on that group, maybe even chair that group. And there are some important responsibilities that you have that will help strengthen the program. And Jay, would you walk us through the first few of these?
One of the unique things that the focus group has really challenged organizations that we work with is that every board of trustees, board of directors must have a development committee. That development committee really takes on a portion of the responsibility of working with the top major donors taking some of that heavy load off of the president and having a load. Taking maybe each development committee member has 5 or 6 key persons that they work with in a campaign. So we really encourage that. That person, they support the leadership of the president and the development team. That is part of the responsibility. They review and affirm and monitor the activity and success of a campaign, and they participate in setting the case priorities. Putting the case together, they will have a role in that. And then reports on annual fund and the campaign progress. Ted, you're going to share the other 3.
Hope you're getting a sense of the really vital role that you can play as a board member serving on this important committee. Another is reporting out on the fundraising progress of your team and of the institution. There are lots of different publics that need to get those reports, but coming from the board, it gives the imprimatur of that the board has taken its oversight seriously, and that your leadership is important in doing that. There's also a very important role for you in approving your institution or your ministry's gift acceptance policies. I'm sure you know that the landscape is littered with organizations that thought they were accepting this wonderful gift, and when they got into the details, they found that they were in a mess. There are some horror stories out there related to all kinds of gift receiving that wasn't handled well, and the organization is saddled with something that is actually going to cost them money. And then the other important area where the board has an important role, and this committee in particular has to do some work, is helping determine what estate gift policies and principles and practices fit your organization. We often find that these are missing and walk alongside in helping people put these together. One of the big places that they're often missing is in a campaign environment where the policies are silent about what happens if that large unexpected estate gift shows up. How do we apply that? Who's in charge of deciding where the money goes? Well, I can assure you, friends, it's much better to have decided that long before that check shows up than when that $2, $3, $5 million estate gift check is sitting on the president's desk. And so we want to encourage you to take your role seriously in doing that. And then, of course, you have a leadership role in giving to whatever the programs are that are part of your team's fundraising program, whether that's for annual fund or campaign. And then you have a further very important role in serving either as an expert witness in a donor meeting or in some kind of gathering, or potentially serving as an advocate, maybe even with someone you might know personally, where you'd be saying, I'd love for you to have an opportunity to hear our story and learn more and pray about whether this is something you could support. So I hope you'll take notes on these important principles. We're going to go on now and talk about the role of the Chief Development Officer. This is the role that I've been in many times in different organizations. And I was on the phone today with a VP, and she's in the middle of a number of challenges of sorting out roles. And we walked through these, and it was very helpful for her to review these together. The first is, of course, that the Chief Development Officer is responsible to create the annual plan. This is the person that sits in that spot where you can see all the different constituencies, whether it's a small shop or a large shop. You can see what this group of donors is going to give. Maybe there's an alumni program. Maybe there's a church parent program, parent program. And the Chief Development Officer is the only person in this spot that can see, this is what we can reasonably expect. These are the programs that we can reasonably expect to launch that involve all of those constituencies. And then, of course, this person needs to lead his or her team. Well, what does that leadership look like? That leadership looks like supporting them in their work, but it also is by being a good example of doing the donor follow-up, making the ask in a timely manner, doing the reporting that's needed, speaking on behalf of the team, advocating for the team with the leadership of the organization, and sometimes even with the board. And then, of course, the important reporting feature This is the way that all of those in leadership, whether it's executive team, the board, the president, this is where they learn, this is where we stand, this is how we get from where we are to where we want to be. This person leads in drafting the case statement. Remember, we talked about the key elements of that case and the key uses of it and the importance of the president's voice. But the chief development officer frequently serves as kind of the executive producer of the case. He or she is pulling together the testimonials, doing some of the editing of institutional documents, digging out those very best photos and quotes that illustrate who you are and what you do. And then leading in drafting those gift acceptance policies that we referenced. This person has access to those in lots of different settings and can decide which ones fit best for you. Not all policies and practices fit every organization. Some are more important than others, and this person sits in that seat where he or she can see these are the ones that work for us. And then, of course, managing the major donor and other donor strategies. Most organizations have limited human and financial resources. You can't talk to every single person. Some important decisions have to be made about the use of people's time and how staff time is allocated, how resources are allocated for travel and events and other things. So it's hard to overstate the importance of this role. So we hope that you can see and think back to our slide where the three circles came together to create this program and how these three positions, the president, the board development committee, and now the chief development officer, working together create the strongest program. Now we're going to talk about some key misses that occur, some shortcomings. Jay, would you like to go over those with us?
I hate to admit it, but I have had a few misses during my tenure as a president and a CEO. And if you aren't having a few misses, you aren't trying hard enough. But here are some of the key failures that often happen in a campaign. And as board members, I think it's important for you to be aware of them, to support your president and CEO when they do happen, and they will happen, but to be knowledgeable of them. Often, one of the key factors is a lack of understanding of the development plan. If the board and the key volunteers in a campaign do not understand the development plan and really follow it clearly and carefully, there will be a failure. The other one is a unity around the elements of the case for support. There are 10 key factors in every good case, and understanding how those all connect together is very important. And if that isn't clearly understood, that can be a key failure. Unclear expectations can also be involved. If you're on the development team or the development committee of the board, you need to understand clearly what the expectations are. When you commit yourself to being on that board committee, how many contacts will I be responsible for? And if those aren't followed up, then that could be a common failure. A lack of accountability. Every person who takes on a commitment has to be accountable to complete that. And so that's an important one as well. The missing and blurring of roles is often a clear failure. Here's one that I've encountered over the years, is a lack of understanding of the role of the chair of the board and the president. When those get mixed up and there's a crossing over, the board chair taking on presidential roles, the president taking on board chair roles, that can create a great deal of friction and a failure in a campaign. And then the last one is minimal involvement. Everybody must be involved. There must be a role for everyone on the board in a capital campaign. Without that, you're not going to be successful. That is often a key failure in a campaign.
Thanks, Jay. You know, in my phone call today, the two of these that were of concern was the blurring of roles and unrealistic expectations. And so we talked through that. And there are some tough decisions, but this is really where you as a board can have some understanding, can help monitor, can help ask good questions and make sure that those roles are clear and make sure the expectations are clear. We're going to go on now with our last slide. We're going to talk a little bit about you personally and your involvement and the ways that, we've been talking sort of at a higher level. We've been talking about the committee. We've been talking about the institution. We're just going to talk for just a minute here about ways that you can lead personally. The first is, of course, we alluded to this very briefly earlier, to make your own gift. I'm sure you've read, heard, probably been told that there's nothing more important in dealing with other major donors that are outside they're not insiders, or outsiders a little bit, or foundations, or some other groups, where a common question is, well, what's the participation in this effort, whatever it is, whether it's annual fund or campaign, by your board? And so that participation by you as a board member is essential in all areas of the institution's fundraising. The second is to join in thanking and reporting back to donors. The second biggest fail that donors report is, quote, "I never heard what happened to my gift." Now, I know you have to tell them about 5 times for them to know what happened to their gift, but you can have an important role in doing that. That could be anything from writing a short thank you note to 3 donors in the middle of the board meeting, to actually going with your chief development officer or president and sitting with that family over dinner and sharing with them what's happening at the institution and reporting back to them on whatever the project might be to which they gave a gift of support. Those are critical. And then also just as important is helping the organization cultivate new relationships. And I'm going to use a term, that some of the younger folks of you listening won't know, but this isn't opening your Rolodex. Look it up. Google Rolodex if you don't know what it is. It's being strategic about introducing those that you think might share a passion for your organization, who may not know enough yet to decide whether or not they could make a gift. But your role in bridging that relationship to them, or serving as an expert witness, as we talked about earlier, that could be the difference maker. So give your own gift, join in thanking in some way, helping to cultivate those new relationships. Those are the first 3. And Jay, would you close us?
Thank you, Ted. And I think perhaps this last one is the most important one. The weight of responsibility on your president or your CEO or your executive's shoulders during a capital campaign, and even during an annual fund campaign, is significant. And it's even more important during this current environment that we're in with the COVID-19, the pandemic. So I'm saying one of the most important roles of the board is to pray for your president and your CEO and your executive director. Lift them up in prayer every day, saying, Lord, give them wisdom, give them strength, and help them to be in front of the right people during this campaign. That's so important. Praying for your development team, the people that are serving every day to support the role of the president in this campaign. And then praying for your donors. Thank God for the people out there who are passionate about the mission of your ministry. We need to pray for them, that God will prosper them, that God will lay on their hearts the burden for your mission and how you're changing lives. Pray that God will lay upon their hearts the need of your organization. So the last important thing is pray. Pray for those in leadership. Thank you.
So thank you for being with us. We hope this has been helpful. We hope you've enjoyed this time. You'll be hearing more about how to ask questions. And of course, you can always reach out to us through our website, or for those of you who are attending in person, we might get a chance to have a conversation. And all those of you who have joined us online, we're so thankful you did that. And we look forward to seeing you soon.